Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started. So if you're in the ransomware and the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, you are in the right session. There's a lot going on today. I want to make sure I confirm that. Real quick, I want to introduce myself. I'm Randy Lee. In my past life, I've managed IT at a number of organizations, so financial services, healthcare. I've been in that mid-level IT management. And for those that are in mid-level IT management, my heart goes out to you. Because you have a lot of responsibility, but not always empowered to make those changes. And we're going to talk about some of the stuff that you can use today, bring back to your leadership team, things that we're seeing in the field. Currently, I'm a systems engineer at Veeam. Any Veeam customers? Excellent, I like seeing that. So I spend a lot of my time talking about data protection. And if you look at Veeam, right, us as employees, we're all trying to change that perception of backup as being something you have to do to something that you need to do. It's really part of your overall defensive strategy when it comes to cybersecurity attacks. So I live locally. If you're a Veeam customer, please come up and see me later. Right, we could talk about things that we can do, right, health checks or other elements, right, of your environment. I live in Wauwatosa. I come from the far, far off land of Wauwatosa. Anyone? Okay. So a couple of topics we'll talk about. We only have 30 minutes. There's a lot. This could be a multi-day, right, or certainly multi-hour session. I'm just going to give you some introductory concepts to NIST, a little more about ransomware, what we're seeing. By the way, I have Joe Martin in the back. He'll happily field your questions as well. He's my manager at Veeam. Thank you, Joe. Some ransomware headlines. We all know, we've all seen them. My kid was 10 years old. He was asking me, what's ransomware? All right, we all know it's out there. We're seeing it everywhere. Mainstream, right? I'm not going to go through all the headlines, but I'm on ransomware alerts. Every day I see them, and every day I'm scared because they're getting worse. Some of the ransomware and mitigation costs, and these are just some that I pulled together. Quite honestly, these are probably obsolete now. Right? We're seeing more and more attacks, more and more sophisticated attacks, and more financial implication or consequences, right, of those attacks. So let's talk a little bit about what ransomware is. Right? We've heard about it. What does it really mean? Right? What are we seeing a lot of? So first of all, there's a couple of different types. By the way, I like to use one simple word with ransomware. It's extortion. Someone is taking your data and selling it to someone else. Someone is taking your data and not allowing you access to it. Someone is not letting you into your systems. If that doesn't qualify as extortion, I don't know what does. So really, when you're having conversations with your leadership team, with other people, with your security people, consider using that word. Right? We are at risk for extortion. What do you mean? Ransomware. Oh, okay, right? The amount of ransomware we're seeing, right, just grows. There's a statistic that 51% of the people pay that ransom. That is scary. Please don't pay the ransom. There's a couple different types that we really talk about. There's other variations, so we saw some of the exploits before, but the lockerware ransom, or ransomware rather, someone's taken your keys. They got into your system, they created their own accounts, they locked your accounts out, they changed credentials, and to get those back, you need to pay the ransom or take some other action. By the way, there's a number of ways to help with that lockerware, ransomware. I'm seeing more often cryptoware ransomware. Someone gets into your system, takes control of your data, right? They encrypt your data. They do something to prevent you from having access to it. A little different than stealing it, and we'll talk about the stages momentarily, but it's happening. Every week, actually several times a week, I'm getting calls from someone that is scared about it, concerned about it, or was hit. And we're only hearing a portion. A lot of people try to not talk about it. Please don't hide those situations because they only make it worse than someone else. So I also want to talk about island hopping. Right, it's a World War II term where we didn't just go to our end target, we island hopped to get there. Supply chain, right? If you yourself are very secure. If you yourself have taken action, there's nothing to say that someone downstream from you, right, someone you work with, someone you have as a trusted partner, doesn't have an impact, and you gave them access to your kingdom. I was once asked, I was an IT director, I was asked by law enforcement if I was concerned about someone's ability to access the network. I said, no, I gave them full access. They had a warrant for their arrest. Yeah, this was someone else's issue, but I just given them access to the kingdom, right? So we trusted another organization, and we shouldn't have. I have the aquarium in the corner. You guys hear about the fish tank incident in Las Vegas? Yeah, perfect example. I'll just go ahead and add this device. By the way, how many people have secure networks at home with devices? Excellent. I knew this would be the crowd to raise their hands on that one. I have isolated networks with my IoT devices. I'm too concerned about my Ring doorbell or my Nest security cam, right? They're separate from everything else. And I have the ability to turn them on and turn them off. Ransomware examples. These are some that I came up with. The ones in bold are the ones I'm seeing or have seen locally. Ryek, Revel, had a really bad NetWalker attack in Illinois maybe 6 months ago, and throw a little endorsement in for my employer. They're able to recover with Veeam. In their situation, everything was taken out. Their Veeam servers, everything across the board, but they had immutable backups, and we'll come back to that topic. They're able to reinstall Veeam and do restores, and as a result of NetWalker. By the way, the ransomware request, $2.1 million. That day, the request dropped to 400,000 as it started doing restores, and they paid nothing. Right? Those are the fun stories. So I'm seeing Bad Rabbit, I'm seeing Crypto Locker. There's others on here as well, but these are the ones that kind of popped into my mind as I was putting this deck together. Top entry points. The big one, right, email. I got an email from my CEO once. He asked me to click on something for some report. No, I'm not going to be doing that. I don't even trust emails from my boss.
I wouldn't either.
Leveraging vulnerabilities. We talked about vulnerabilities. They're everywhere. They continue to get worse. We find more and more. How many patches did Microsoft release last month? It was quite a few. So they're out there. Remote desktop protocol. Hey, welcome to COVID. Let's give out an RDP and hope for the best. We're seeing entry points there that are scary. Drive-by attacks. Hey, click on this website, and while you're there, click on this link. Whoops. That's a perfect example of a drive-by attack. We're seeing a lot of that. And then USB devices. Please be careful of those. And also, I had a QR code up earlier. How many scanned that? Okay. You shouldn't have. No, I'm kidding.
This is actually a Veeam phone, so it's
Good answer. By the way, there's something on the bottom here. It's a weird trick. Now, it's not my trick. It's something I read, and some of you are nodding like you may have heard about this before. If you are in the Russian Federation and you attack others outside the Russian Federation, they don't care. If you're in the Russian Federation and you attack someone within the Russian Federation, they will find you. Why not put a Russian keyboard set, virtual, on your system somewhere so that when they scan, that software automatically stops running and removes itself? I have no idea if this works. No one's ever told me, yep, it worked, because there's no real way of knowing. Something happened and it went away. No one was the wiser. Consider that. There's a link to it. I'll make sure you have access to that link as well. Ransomware stages. Different things to different people, right? Stage 0 is someone found a hole, right, a vulnerability into your environment. We all have them. We don't know where they are. We try to plug them. We try to stop them, but they're out there somewhere. Right? We all have them. Stage 1, the bad actors have access to an individual system or multiple systems, or limited. Maybe they took over someone's notebook, someone's individual file server, right? Very limited in scope. We're still not concerned. It's not a good thing, but it's relatively isolated. Right now we start getting into stage 2. They have access to data, and they're able to take that data. Right? 14% of firms indicate that the time between compromise and detection is up to 6 months. So someone may be in your system now, you don't know it. They may be pulling down data, selling that data, displaying that data, who knows. Now we start getting into the scary ones, right, stage 3, where they have write access. This is where the actual encryption happens. Had a customer call me, he said, this is on a Monday, he called me, said on Saturday, I got a call that things were weird at work. I go, what does that mean? He goes, I don't know either. So I drove in. Yeah, things were weird. Files were disappearing. I looked at my server. I saw someone encrypting my data. Okay, that's weird. What do you do? I unplugged the NIC right away. So he took immediate action. We're going to come back to that. There's a question I have later to ask you. But that's where we start seeing an impact. That's where, Veeam, where I work, right, we are not a cybersecurity company specifically, but we are part of your cybersecurity strategy, right? There is an ability to recover, and we have methods of recovery, and we'll cover some of those. And then stage 4, this is where it gets really scary. They have introduced new hooks into your system, right? Creating new accounts. We'll talk about some of the ways to help with some of these stages. Speaking of bad actors, had to throw that in. All right, so cybersecurity versus cybersecurity frameworks. I think we all practice good cybersecurity. At least we try to. Right, I patch my desktops at home, I have my kids patch their devices. We're all doing something that we think is good. Practicing good cybersecurity principles is a good thing. It's not as good as having an active cybersecurity framework. Okay, what do you mean by framework? I have guidelines. I have standards. Anyone CISSPs? Excellent. Okay, so you know about some of these cybersecurity frameworks, but it's about best practices, and it's continuous. I like to remind people of the concept of due care versus due diligence. If you took your CISSP exam, you probably saw that. Due care is trying to do the right thing at the moment. Due diligence is doing the right thing all the time, and then doing it again next week and the week after that, and keeping that process up. There's a number of frameworks. Some of them cost money. Some of them are better than others. The one I really personally like is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. And again, what's your favorite version of Linux, right? Same kind of thing here. What's your favorite cybersecurity framework? I like this one because it's very thorough. It's very complete. They cover a lot, and I'm just going to show you some samples. We only have 30 minutes here. First of all, what is NIST? Right? It's a non-regulatory agency. Used to be the National Bureau of Standards, right, if you go back some years. And it's part of the Department of Commerce, right? The non-regulatory agency is a big part of this, right? They're not here to enforce rules. They're here to give you help, right? And it's all about providing you resources. They're always updating their stuff. We're trying to, I think the latest version, we're in a 1.something version. The version 1.1. So it's a collection of standards, guidelines, and best practices to manage cybersecurity. Talked to a lot of customers. We don't know where to start with cybersecurity. We know we're concerned about it. We've heard about it. We know other people are being hit. Our competitors were just hit. I got a call on a Saturday morning once from a CIO. Hey, can you talk to us about cybersecurity? I said, sure thing. Monday morning, 10 a.m. Just can we do it earlier? Okay, what's going on? Right? Some of their competitors were hit. They knew they needed some immediate action, but they didn't know where to start. They knew there's policies out there. Let me talk about NIST. Right? I'm not going to do all your NIST stuff for you, but let me introduce you to the concept. Extremely comprehensive. And there is some federal enforcement, right? If you go back to Executive Order 13636, it's about NIST, right? Presidential order, get your standards up. There's a bunch of links out here too. What is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework? I can't go into all that right in 30 minutes. I do want to introduce you to the concept. Basically, it's about identifying, protecting, detecting, responding, and recovering. In that order, yes, but it's continuous, right? You may be at different stages within different systems. And you should always be doing it. There's no real idle time for it. Now, ideally, you can automate some of these processes, get your executive leadership involved, right? What's the one thing executive leadership likes to do around IT? Make it someone else's problem. Privacy, protection of this data, that is all a C-level, right? Or board of directors conversation. and you bring the tools. We are, as IT people, as technology people, we are custodians. We are not the owners of data. We own some of our own data, but the reality is we're kind of like law enforcement, right? We make sure and apply the appropriate controls, limitations, call it security, call it what you want. There's a lot to this slide, but again, it focuses on identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Most of my time is spent a little bit of, a lot of protection. Hopefully up front we're doing some protection, some detection, a lot of recovery. There's a number of ways we can recover. A lot of Veeam customers here, if you have questions on how to do some recovery, whether or not you're a Veeam customer doesn't matter. Happy to help, happy to show you some things that we've seen success with, some areas where we've not seen some success. Let's break this down a little bit further. Okay, there's a lot on this eye chart. We'll make sure you get a copy. Otherwise, just go to the NIST site, and it breaks down those sections. One key element, identifying your assets. I remember specifically I had a situation where, I remember this like it was yesterday, someone built a server and brought it into our office and plugged it in, and then opened up hires and tickets when it didn't work, right? Shame on us for not knowing it was there. We let them do that. We're unaware they did that. As part of our identification, we should have been very clearly aware that it was there. Shame on them for not involving IT. But all the protection we had in mind, all the placeholders we had to keep track of all this stuff were out the window at that point because they went around IT. I'm not going to go through all these specifics, but I highly encourage you to look at that NIST Cybersecurity Framework and bring this back to your leadership teams. Get them involved. This is not an IT issue. By the way, I can't tell you how many times that as a Veeam SE, customers ask me what their data retention requirements should be. I don't know. I can give you some ideas, but I don't think even you should be answering that question as IT director. That is something that comes out of legal. So back in my healthcare days, I went to my healthcare, or my legal team, my healthcare department, emphasis on legal, and I said, what are data retention requirements? Their answer was, it's an IT issue. No, it's not. It is, you should be barking at me, you should be chewing me out right now because I don't have this up to your standards. Well, we don't have standards. Yeah, that's the problem. You need to tell me what we're doing. Otherwise, I'm going to back up 3 days. And that's it. And by the way, it's your issue, not mine. It wasn't quite so adversarial when I brought this up with them, but you understand the point. So identify, right? Develop an organizational understanding to manage cybersecurity. It's a cultural, we all go through the cybersecurity training. It's not a lot of fun. Users don't like having to do it. It is extremely essential. Every time I take one, I learn something. And if I'm learning something in my role where I do this all the time, you should be learning a lot. Protect. And I'll show you a couple slides to talk about protection. So as a recovery company, as a data protection company, as someone that helps you restore data when necessary, this is a key element of what we do. There's a couple rules or a couple of guidelines, right, our own best practices, but they're industry standard that I like to talk about. First of all is the 3-2-1 rule. I'm expanding that a little bit. 3 copies of your data on at least 2 different devices with 1 offsite. So maybe I have my Milwaukee location, I have a primary array, I have a backup array, and then I send my data to some other city, to Madison, right? 3 copies, 2 different devices with 1 offsite. We like to make sure we test those backups. We have ways to do it within Veeam. There are other applications that do that as well. By all means, if you haven't tested your backups, assume they don't work. And I need a full test. And there's a lot of tricks to that. I can show you a couple. With also one of those copies being immutable. We'll come back to that momentarily. Management zone. If you want an easy thing to do, take all your recovery systems, put it in a completely separate environment. Whatever credentials I log into my production environment with, I use different credentials for my recovery environment. It makes it a little more difficult to manage, but I guarantee you'll be happy in the end. It's an easy thing to do, and if you're a Veeam customer, it's minutes to do that. Leverage immutability. We just had a conversation in the hallway with someone that made their data immutable, and by that I mean locking it so it cannot be modified or changed. Right? I write my data set immutability for 90 days, cannot be deleted. They had the CEO of that organization call the CEO of the cloud provider or the organization and say, please delete our data, and they refused to do it. Good for them, it's immutable. The number one target for like netwalker attacks, is your recovery systems. They go after your recovery systems first because the recovery systems, they have a lot more leverage. So use immutability. That could be on-premise. Well, I have another slide too. We'll come back to that. Encryption. If you haven't encrypted your data in the cloud, someone else will. So please be careful about that. And don't lose your encryption keys. I can't find them for you. Thank you for asking. So 3 copies of the data, 2 devices, at least 1 offsite. Test your backups and make sure there's no errors. Let's talk a little bit about immutability, and I kind of hit on it already. I see cloud-based immutability. I write my data to a cloud provider. I ask the cloud provider to make sure that data cannot be deleted for a certain period of time. I've had security people call me up. We want to change our immutability policy. Can you help? No, you got to wait until the policy expires and then redo it, which is a good thing. That's working by design. I have a number of customers putting in their own immutable targets. What's the best way to secure a Windows server?
Turn it off.
Yes, or replace it with Linux. By the way, true story, my kid wanted, he was 11 years old, wanted a PC in his room. I said, not a problem, but it's got to run Linux. What? You need to know this. Right. He wanted the Ubuntu, by the way, for those playing the home game. There's a lot of reasons to do that. So object storage, object lock, immutability based on your own cloud or based on your own platform. So make sure that's protected. Backups are not archives. Archives are not backups. And please, snapshots are not backups. They're all part of your strategy. Snapshots, perfect use. Well, use snapshots, but don't assume that they're going to help you in long-term situations. We utilize, as Veeam, we utilize snapshots as part of our data protection strategy. We'll take the snapshots on the array, do a backup, and then put them in an archive. A backup is something is broken, I need to get it back. I had a customer whose DR plan, and I completely understand the logic. Their DR plan was to recover from the cloud. They had 100 terabytes of data. It's going to take a few weeks. All right, so have an on-premise as well. Yeah. And then detect. There's a number of things to detect. I'll give you a couple little patterns to look for, and again, this is all about data recovery. If you see a high write rate and high read rate and high processors, something's going on. Someone could be reading your data, encrypting that data, and then writing that data somewhere else. Huge red flag. Maybe it's normal, but make sure you look at it. Another big one is, hey, my deduplication ratio went down to 0. Yeah, something's going on. Those are flags. Remember I said that dwell time? These help solve that dwell time. Hopefully we'll solve that dwell time. They're waiting 3 or 4 months to do an actual attack, but in the meantime they've encrypted your data or done something, right? These are indicators that you may want to take some action. And then respond, recover, right? These are all elements that we can get into. By the way, what's the difference between a DR plan and a ransomware recovery plan? They're the same. One, maybe you lost hardware, right? But the other, you lost data. You should have the same level of attention and a lot of the same hooks, right, into your data recovery plan with a ransomware attack as you do with DR. By the way, please don't hide something. If something happens, please report it. IC3, they're very willing to help. Great organization. If something happens, please tell them. I've had organizations that kind of just don't really want to let people know. I completely get it. It just makes the situation worse. And they're here to help. And don't pay the ransom. By the way, what's a vulnerability, a threat, and a risk? Right, well, vulnerabilities, we connect to the internet, right? We have email, those are all vulnerabilities. Threats, something is actually happening. Someone's trying to go after you, right? So my vulnerabilities plus my threats, there's my risk. Right? It's a combination of those elements. We know we can't avoid vulnerabilities, we can reduce them. We know we can't avoid threats, we can reduce them. But if you combine those together, the amount of vulnerabilities I have, plus the threats that I have, that equals my total risk. Couple or 3 questions I want to leave here with. Do you have authorization to take action in the event of a cybersecurity event? That's huge. Something was happening. I don't know, I better call Bob. No, take action, do something. Have a pre-auth, be able to take that action up front. Do you have an incident response plan? Not in your head, in writing. If you want a template, I can help you. You can look them up on Google, or I can send you some good ones. And then, have you ever done tabletop exercises? Walk in, hey, we have I see this happening, what should we do? Everyone brainstorm. By the way, if you're interested in doing tabletop exercises, we're gonna be doing some customer tabletop exercises in the next few months where we throw scenarios out and see how people react. You will learn a lot, I will learn a lot, we'll all learn a lot from each other. So tabletop exercises are very important. I had a customer, by the way, the tabletop exercises, and then the next week they're hit with ransomware, and what thought it was another tabletop exercise. No, this is legit, we gotta go. So that's all that I got. Any questions on Ben Affleck? Bad actor? Okay. Any other questions? So I'm looking forward to seeing everyone later. Come by, scan me, we'll see you at happy hour.